would be stat students pursuing, of course, at WSC, let me put that there, at WSC, pursuing a business degree. Okay, so you heard me say, one of the reasons why I said, are you in biomed? Are you a college student? Or Haley, are you really in business? Because I have 3 different rosters, okay? Because the business degree would have a business prefix for the class, and the biomed students or other students will have a math prefix. And that only matters for transferring. The class is really the same. But I'm talking about here that this, like right now, if I made it more specific, this semester, the students in the sample will include Haley and all my students in the morning class that are also pursuing a business degree. It will not include the biomed students, and it will not include Anna and Sienna, who are just taking the math prefix class. Okay, so it could be more specific. I could say all statistics students at WSC right now, and this semester. It could be more specific than that. Now, another way of showing a population and sample is what we call a Venn diagram. It doesn't have to be a rectangle. It could be a circle inside a circle. But usually, I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. Usually, that bigger box that says the party of registered voters in a country, in a certain country, that will be your population. Now, the smaller sample or the smaller set, the smaller rectangle inside that says the party of registered voters in the country who responded to a survey. That would be your sample. I mean, it could be as simple as that, but sometimes multiple choice questions will trick you, okay? So it says identify the population. So it's party of registered voters in a certain country, not specifically that took the survey. So if I don't choose the ones that took the survey, I could probably eliminate A and I could eliminate C because those took the survey. You see that? So they're not your population. But look how specific this gets. This says number of registered voters. This is party of registered voters. So I want to match that closely, so it will be D. Seems like the same thing, but just multiple choice can be really tricky. Okay, now they're going to ask you to identify the sample. And the sample are in that same population, but they answered the survey. So just by looking at this, I could eliminate B and I could eliminate D because they did not take the survey, okay? Now, when you look at A and C, it does say they responded to the survey, but again, the wording is very specific. The party of registered voters in the country that responded to the survey, so that would be A. Okay? Okay, so now when we start describing a population or a sample, usually describing for us would be a mathematical attribute, but it could be something slightly different. That's what the parameter and statistic is. By the way, it's not uncommon that we get confused which one goes with which. So I'm going to actually tell you P and S are going to be a way to remind you that this goes with population and statistic goes with sample. They're not the same thing as a population or a sample, but they go with it. So statistic is a number that represents a property of a particular sample. So statistic goes with the sample. Now, a parameter is also a numerical attribute or characteristic, but it's for the whole population. So that will actually go with the population. Now, here's the deal though. Like, remember what I said, I want to survey all freshmen on campus, but half the people don't respond. So that's the reason why in statistics, we rely on a sample to draw a conclusion about the population. And that's why it says a parameter is a numerical characteristic of the whole population, but we're really estimating it or drawing a conclusion from a statistic that comes from a sample. So let me give you an example here. So I could have as a parameter the average GPA, or just the grade point average of all business students. Now, frankly, that's too general. So it would probably be something like the GPA of all business students during this semester, okay? Because GPA keeps changing. Now, statistic will be the GPA of business students currently, okay, hold on, I meant to put business students currently taking statistics. So now that you know there are business majors here, there are science majors, there are students who are undecided. A lot of concurrent students are undecided, they haven't declared a major. My statistic will refer to somebody like Haley, or my students in the morning class that are also business students, business majors, only them when I look at the statistic. But the parameter will be the GPA for all business students. They may not be in statistics at all. And I think I misspelled that, didn't I? There's actually something called statics in physics. So let me fix it. I think if English teachers have to do percents with their grades, I should spell so. Even in math. I usually not too bad, but I get carried away when I write and talk. Questions about that? Okay, so this example I actually grabbed from our book, because I once in a while go back and forth between examples in Sophia or examples in the book, because I don't want you to forget that you do have an ebook if you want to use it. So an example is actually in the body of your book, in the explanation. So remember, we had already opened the book here. So when you look at 1.1, that's where we are, section 1.1, and you go here. This is exactly what we're going to do. And your book has problems. They're not interactive, but notice it says show or hide the solution. So they will let you think about it, work it out, and then you can do it. So that's an example from the body of the book. And that's actually what this one is. So it says determine what the key terms refer to in the following study. And in particular, I'm interested in population, sample, parameter, and statistic. It says we want to know the average mean amount of money first-year college students spend at some college, ABC college, on supplies, but that do not include books. Then it says we randomly survey 100 first-year students at the college. So I'm going to say, because I'm not asking you any other questions except for population, sample, parameter, and statistic, I'm going to say this is extra information. I'll talk about it after we answer what is the population, the sample, the parameter, and the statistic, okay? So it says we want to know the average mean amount or the average amount of money first-year college students spend at ABC College on supplies, not including books. So my population will be all first-year students at ABC College. My sample and I'm getting specific because it says they randomly survey 100 first-year students. So it's 100 first-year students at ABC College who were surveyed. Okay, now we get to more specific information, which is the parameter in the statistics. So remember, what we are trying to figure out is the mean, the average of the amount of money the first-year college students spend on supplies, not including textbooks at this particular college. So the parameter refers to the statistic, refer to the population. So the parameter will be the average amount. I can't spell again, hold on. The average amount of money. Here's the key. All first-year students at ABC College spend on supplies, but not books. Then the statistic refers to the sample. The statistic will actually refer kind of almost the same thing. It will say the average amount of money the 100 first-year students at ABC College in the survey. I'm going to put that in parentheses. In the survey, spent on supplies, not books. I think it takes us more time to write than to actually think about how that works. Question. So the last example I have here, I took from another place in your book. So remember, the book, the ebook, has the content, the actual meat of the book is right here in this links, and that's where I found this example 1.1. And then when you go to the bottom, or the bottom of that particular chapter, then it has the homework. And these are the ones that if you click on an odd problem, it will show you what the solution is for that particular section. I think it's this solutions here, but if you click on that, it will give it to you. And that's what the screenshot that you have there last, that's what I have, but we're gonna look at number 47. So I'm just showing you that what the ebook can actually have for you. But one of the reasons why it's free, is not interactive. Unlike a lot of these books, they are fairly comprehensive, but once in a while, the actual explanations are not very comprehensive. So I like some of their examples and I use them. Now, there's more, they're asking you more than I will normally ask you here. It says for each of the following exercises, identify the population, the sample, the parameter, and the mean. I will not ask you anything about the variable and the data. You know, those terms may come later, but there are a lot more hands-on and applicable, not necessarily as much of vocabulary. Okay, and we're gonna look at number 47. It says a marriage counselor is interested in the proportion of clients they counsel who stay married. Okay, so it says specifically a marriage counselor. Like this counselor only does counseling for couples. So the population will be all couples in counseling. Of course, with this particular counselor. Okay, that's just extra details that we don't have to. Now, but then it says that the marriage counselor is interested in the proportion of clients that they counsel who stay married. So then the sample will be couples. I'm going to write who were in counseling who stayed married. Now, this marriage counselor is particularly interested in the sample, not as much as the population. But if we were talking about the proportion, since the population is everyone, then we would say that the parameter would have to be the proportion of couples that are counseled. This is a bit tricky because I don't know that we're interested in that. Like if we have a list of all the couples that they're being counseled at this company, then that will be the proportion will be 100%. But it could be that you're more specific and you said this year. Okay, then it could be a little bit more specific. Now, this is the part that is important for the sample. This statistic, that's the proportion of couples, and I'm going to put in parentheses here, who are counseled or are in counseling who stay married. This is really what that counselor is interested in figuring out. And I still think it's too general. It would have to be more specific for a year or a number of years to do that. But it's the proportion out of the population that actually receive counseling but stay married.
So whenever they're asking like the member statistic, are we like in this question specifically is literally just population sample, but we're adding the proportion to answer it?
So it wasn't very specific, but the proportion of a population will be 100%. So that's not very interesting. In fact, right there is not. But in the statistic is what proportion of the population actually stay married. So if we had some specific numbers, it will make more sense. But if you had 100 couples in your population, your proportion is 100%. But if only 73 stayed married, then your statistic will be 73%, or 73 out of 100, however many there are. That's why I said this is kind of minor here and doesn't make as much sense, because what she's trying, or the counselor is trying to figure out, is the proportion of all the couples that they have counseled who actually stay married. Okay, so this is the end of section 1.1. So remember how I kept saying in the course summary right now, the dates, most of the dates are, let me see if I can find it real quick. Most of those dates are set for February 5th, but they will change as we go. So I knew that today we would finish 1.1. So that due date stays correct. Assignment number 1 will be due at midnight on January 20th. So I'm going to write this down. Let me make this a little bit smaller. And I'm writing this maybe more for myself than you, because if I don't do this, and then when I come back, I forget. So assignment number 1 is due on Tuesday, and that's the 20th. Assignments are always due at midnight, actually at 11:59 p.m.
So do we ever turn this paper into you?
No. But now, I really recommend that you take notes, because when it's time to make your note card for tests, it will be good to have it with you. Now, this probably will be fairly simple because it's just vocabulary, but remember what I said, it's good, maybe in a day or two, go through your notes, make sure you understood everything. Open the assignment, not on Tuesday at 11:30 or 11:45 at night, but open your assignment maybe sometime Monday. Make sure you kind of walk through the assignments,